In 2004, British scientists in Manchester first extracted graphene from graphite, the material used to make pencils, and they won the Nobel Prize in Physics for Advancement in 2010. Graphene's potential is enormous. It's 200 times stronger than steel and yet incredibly light. Currently, graphene is being used in sensor chips to sniff out or detect chemicals in the air and disease enzymes in blood. These silicon chips are dotted with thin flecks of graphene. The flecks are transparent and only one atom thick, so applying them to silicon chips is an involved process. Graphene is man-made in labs like this one, using a process known as chemical vapor deposition. A technician slides a capsule containing a copper foil sheet into a furnace. He screws a cap on the end of the capsule and shuts the furnace lid. The machine is then switched on, and all the oxygen is driven out of the chamber by argon gas. When the furnace reaches 1000 degrees Celsius, the technician introduces methane gas and hydrogen. A reaction occurs that deposits graphene onto the foil. The graphene that's produced is so thin that it's transparent and can't be seen with the naked eye. Next, tiny gold contacts are applied to a silicon wafer and submerged in solvent to rinse off the excess gold. The remaining gold bits on the wafer are the electrical contacts. A dip in acetone cleans off more of the lingering loose flakes. And a final rinse in alcohol removes the rest. Using a diamond-tip scribe, the technician scores the silicon wafer and breaks it along the score lines, creating rectangular chips. Another technician deposits liquid plastic onto the transparent graphene that's on the copper foil. He locks the foil in a machine called a spin coater. It spins at 3000 RPM. This causes the plastic to spread evenly across the graphene film on the foil. It also accelerates the curing of the plastic. Then, the process of separating the plastic-coated graphene from the copper foil begins. He clips a wire to a set of tweezers. Using the tweezers, he picks up a small piece of the plastic graphene and copper sandwich and plunges it into water. The tweezers apply an electrical charge through the copper. This causes bubbles to form in the water. These bubbles lift the graphene and plastic film away from the copper. The graphene now only has its plastic backing to cling to. And the plastic-backed graphene rectangle is then gently retrieved from the beaker of water. It's immersed into a series of solutions to remove contaminants. In the last beaker, the rectangle is slid off and allowed to float freely. A silicon chip is picked up with tweezers and used to retrieve the floating plastic-backed graphene. And that graphene now sits on the silicon chip. After taping metal stencils over 3 of the graphene-covered chips, they're suspended above gold pellets in a machine known as the evaporator. A large bell jar is placed over the evaporator before a technician turns on the heat. As the gold evaporates, a vacuum pulls it to the stencils and the exposed graphene, and it adheres. Then the gold cools and solidifies. The stencils are then removed from the chips, revealing gold horizontal runners between the contacts. The chips are then transferred to a plasma etcher. Plasma gas floods the chamber and strips off all the graphene that isn't protected by gold. Only the gold contacts and the gold-covered graphene runners remain on the chip. Solvent is used to dissolve the plastic backing. It takes the protective gold with it, leaving only the graphene behind. We now have a completed graphene sensor chip. It's time to test its sensory powers. A technician exposes the chip to antibodies for a certain disease protein. The antibodies from the pipette attach to the surface of the graphene. She tests the signal from the chip to confirm that it's detecting the protein correctly. And with testing complete, the graphene chip is ready to sniff out chemicals and diseases wherever it can find them. But that's just the beginning for this amazing discovery. Our next invention held the title of the world's smallest car for more than 50 years and was included in the famous Guinness Book of World Records. Designed and manufactured in the UK, this car is just 1.4 metres long and a metre wide. It has only room for a driver, so your friends will have to walk. But don't worry, this isn't it. But you can worry now, because this is it. Built in 1962, the PL50 was intended to be a commuter vehicle for one person. The body is made section by section in moulds, and each part is covered with an epoxy resin known as a gel coat in whatever colour the customer wants. Once that cures, a sheet of fiberglass matting is laid on top and impregnated with resin. This bonds the matting to the gel coat layer. Any trapped air, which could cause defects, is forced out. Then narrower strips of matting are applied around the perimeter. The more porous fiberglass matting absorbs more resin. A second layer of fiberglass matting and resin is then laid over the entire mould. The car part is then left to cure for a day. 24 hours later, the body sections are extracted from their respective moulds. This is the main outer shell section. The gel coat forms a smooth and shiny finish on top of the sturdy fiberglass underneath. Using a saw equipped with a small blade, all the excess fiberglass is meticulously trimmed away until all the edges are tidied up. Elsewhere in the factory, technicians weld together the car's lightweight aluminium petrol tank. It holds 4 litres of petrol. A hole is drilled through the tank, and the filler tube is welded into place, complete with its screw-on cap. The car has 3 wheels, 2 at the front and 1 at the back, which is driven by the engine. Engineers assemble the wheel hubs one at a time and mount them onto the triangular suspension of the axle. Then they flip over the steel chassis and install the disc brakes on each wheel. On the rear wheel, they mount a sprocket for the chain that the engine drives to rotate the wheel. Then a shock absorber is added to the rear wheel, along with hydraulic brake lines and brake calipers for all 3 wheels. The engineers then bolt the wheel and tyres onto the wheel hubs. The tyres are only 15 centimetres in diameter. After installing the 1-cylinder engine in the middle of the body, the chassis is bolted on, connecting the shock absorber on the rear wheel to a mount underneath the body. Next, all the electrical components are installed, such as the headlight, the brake lights, the indicators, and the windscreen wiper. Drivers also have the option of having an electric engine installed. If that's required, 4 12-volt rechargeable batteries are fitted. The car uses a rack and pinion steering system. The steering column is attached to a circular gear called a pinion. When the driver turns the steering wheel in one direction, the pinion moves that way along the rack, which is a track with teeth connected by rods to the front wheels. The rack moves and turns the wheels, which steers the car. With the vehicle now mechanically complete, all that's left to do is install the windscreen and windows. They caulk the aluminium frames with silicone, insert them in the opening, then rivet them to the car. Inside, the engineers mount the steering wheel and the dashboard, which houses the speedometer, the indicators, and the full beam light. They then hang the door that they moulded earlier, which has since been fitted with chrome hinges and a handle. The style consistent with the original 1960s design of the car. A vinyl driver's seat is fitted, and next to that, opposite the door, sits the petrol tank and the reservoir for the windscreen washer fluid. With moped wing mirrors and its exposed engine, the world's smallest production car is ready to hit the road and take on all weathers. Let's just hope there's not a big gust of wind anytime soon. Or hitchhikers for that matter.